Okay. Well, welcome everybody. Thank you all for joining us here today for BJSS's webinar on imposter syndrome and our wonderful panel here. For those of you who don't know who we are, we're a technology consultancy. We collaborate with our customers to deliver complex, innovative technology solutions and engineering ones that millions of people use every day. My name is Eleanor Davill. I'm a business analyst and squad lead here at BJSS. I'm going to introduce you to our lovely panel here shortly. I'm going to give you a brief introduction to what imposter syndrome is and some of the common characteristics of it, and then we'll crack on with our panel parts. Please do use the chat function that we've got available to us so that we can answer any of your questions if you've got any in particular that you'd like to give to the panel. Okay, let's start off with meeting our lovely panelists. So start with Natasha. I'm going to make you, oh, you've got your name, so you don't need to do the awkward wave. So Natasha's our Talent and Skills Project Coordinator at Manchester Digital. Then we have Sarah Pearce, who's a Future Talent Manager at Autotrader. We have Stuart, Bullock, Managing Director at BJSS, and Vesna Milanovic, Delivery Manager at BJSS. Thank you all for joining us here today. Greatly appreciated. So I'm going to assume that most of you know what imposter syndrome is, given that you're joining us here today, but just in case, the definition as per Wikipedia, a nice official source, is a psychological pattern in which one doubts one's own accomplishments and has a persistent internalized fear of being exposed as a fraud. So it's an estimated 70% of people experience those feelings at some point or another in their lives to varying degrees, and it affects people from all different parts of life, but it is particularly prevalent in minority communities, academia, highly competitive environments. People have it a lot in new jobs with high levels of scrutiny, things like IT. It's worth saying that it's completely normal that when you get a new challenge as a human, you are going to worry if you're going to do it well or not, especially if it is something outside of your comfort zone. However, when you combine it with the fear and with a lack of confidence, it can become a really vicious cycle. In terms of common characteristics of imposter syndrome, I'm sure some of you will look at these and recognize some of them. So setting excessively high standards, thinking that you need to be perfect all the time, and if you're not perfect, it means it's not success. Overly focusing on what has gone wrong, I'm definitely a good one for that. If you have to work hard at it, then you're clearly not smart or good enough, and it only counts if you do it all on your own. If you have to get someone else to help you, obviously you can't count it. Fear of showing inexperience, lacking knowledge, feeling like you need to have all the answers to everything all of the time. And if you suffer from it an awful lot of the time, it can have a really negative impact in that you can't enjoy your downtime or your non-achievement activities because you don't feel like you're proving yourself. Okay, that's a whirlwind introduction to imposter syndrome. If it's something you want to learn more about, there's all sorts of resources out there, and we will be doing another session in the future about it. But I'm going to dive in to the panel discussion because that's the really interesting bit. So let me stop sharing my screen. There we go. Okay, Natasha, I'm going to throw the first question over to you. As I mentioned, it's often prevalent in different parts of people. And in fact, 2/3 of women in the UK are known to be affected by imposter syndrome at some point or another. Do you think the imbalance of women in the digital industry has something to do with that? Does it play a part?
I think imposter syndrome definitely does play a part in the imbalance of women in the digital and tech sector. When I think about that question, I tend to think of it at the kind of future talent. And so why aren't people going into digital and tech? And also, I suppose, why aren't we retaining them? So to give a bit of context to the lack of women, in 2020, we identified that only 32% of people in our sector, both technical and non-technical, were women. So obviously, we've got a huge problem there. And I think part of it is the fact that from the kind of school, college through to throughout your career level, the perception of tech and tech skills is still quite male, and you may attribute those skills to boys specifically or men specifically. Equally, I think that tech itself is quite fast-paced and constantly changing. So you may learn a language and feel quite competent in it, but then that will quickly change and you no longer feel like an expert. So if you're someone that struggles with imposter syndrome, living in this constantly changing, fast-paced environment and working in this sector means that you probably are going to constantly feel like an imposter, and that might be something that is quite overwhelming. So definitely, I think imposter syndrome plays a part. It may not be the whole picture, but I'm sure as women in tech and as for the role models that we work with and the people that we spoke to, it definitely continually plays a part.
Sarah, what do you think about how role models and mentors can play a part in addressing imposter syndrome?
I think it can play a massive part, as Natasha was saying, those stereotypes that young women in particular develop through education around what it looks like to be in digital and tech. I think role models are a key part of breaking those stereotypes and enabling young women to be able to see, people in those roles, what those roles are really like, and breaking down some of those barriers that maybe people assume are there when they're not necessarily the case. And in particular, some of the work we do with Digital Her, where we bring the role models out to young women, we really get the opportunity to showcase what it's really like and share those stories and hopefully empower them to explore and try and navigate a career into tech and digital too.
Stuart, I'm going to pick on you next. So imposter syndrome, I think people often think, as I said, it particularly applies to people starting their career or new roles, but for leadership positions, I'm assuming it's exactly the same. But for leadership, how does it apply when people can seem quite confident in what they do, and how do you become a confident leader?
Yeah, good question. I think it definitely applies to people in leadership positions too. So by definition, I think driven people want to do and contribute more than they've done before, which means they're operating outside their comfort zones. I think some people in these positions typically come across as confident, but I think we can all be assured that in most cases, that's a coping mechanism they developed for themselves, so they appear outwardly in control, I think. And in my experience, I think people who are stepping up into a bigger role are probably more committed to making a success and also empathize better with the people that they're managing because they feel part of that group. So I know that means we don't necessarily have the experience to repeat and not to make mistakes, but I think we're all humans, we make mistakes and we're all trying to do our best. And I think, we treat everyone with respect and listen to advice from mentors and people we trust, I guess. So let me take my job, for example. I've never run a business with over 1,000 people across multiple countries, but, I don't do that actually. There's a phenomenal, wonderful group of people that do that. And I count myself really lucky. So I guess my tip would be just be aware that not every company hires and promotes people that have already done that job before, and everybody's stepping into a bigger role. Whatever the job advert says, I think.
Vesna, what do you do if you recognise imposter syndrome in others? If you see that, is there anything that you can do to help them?
It's quite difficult actually to spot that very often. That's deep inside a person because it's basically they're questioning their skills inside that they're not showing. But there are some giveaways. You can see someone in your team actually working very hard at succeeding or achieving a lot, but still not being happy, not being depressed or not accepting actually prizes and celebrating success. So they probably suffer of imposter syndrome. You can't go ahead and tap on shoulder and say, hey, you're suffering from the syndrome. But there are things that actually help, like talking, making sure that they're part of the team. Because very often, as Stuart said, when you embark in something challenging, unfamiliar or new environment, we start shrinking inside and say, oh, can I do that? Did I ever do that? So making sure that they are accepted, they're part of the team, making sure that they know what's expectations, trying to link to what they already done so that they can do. Another things about expectations, I think that's the crucial because I've heard so many people coming at the task, at the project, expecting they can do everything on their own. They can actually excel from the first day, know everything, and then they really suffer. You can see that very, very soon they get exhausted. So making that clear, put that on the table, saying what is expected, that it's normal not to know everything, that it's normal to make mistakes, that it's normal that accepting help is not the failure. It's just actually we are a team and we need to work together. It's not easy task. I'm not saying that's easy. It's just that these conversations actually can surface some of these problems. Also talking things like this, talking about imposter syndrome, pointing to sources. There are loads of things out there, but just mentioning that I think sometimes can click. It did for me anyway. First time I came across the article, it was like, yeah, that's me. that and actually help you detach yourself from it and recognize when actually you start feeling that you're not, that you're faking it, which you're not, and it helps actually taking forward.
Yeah, I think for me, finding out there was a name for it weirdly made me feel a lot better, in that I could label the feelings that I was feeling and just not thinking it was, oh, it's just me.
Yeah, exactly. And then you can detach. Exactly.
Yeah. I should say, for all the people watching, if there's particular questions that you'd like the panel to ask, please do feel free to write those in. If not, I've got a nice list, so I'll keep going through those. All right, I'm going to just open this one up to the room if people would like to ask it. But what are your top tips when it comes to handling with imposter syndrome, in particular, given our current COVID climate, where mental health has that more of an impact than it normally does, even more than it normally does, I should say. How do you balance your mental health versus all of the asks we have of us alongside imposter syndrome?
Shall I go then? I think I guess that you'll get criticism, and that's probably why we'll feel that way. But I guess listen to the criticism, consume it, and then break that down and kind of talk that through with people that you trust, because the words won't necessarily convey the hidden meaning. And I think it's worth looking at that. And then the coping side of that, I guess, build some ways that works for you. So I think about things in I guess it's like a project manager's kind of way. I think about things in the long term, medium term, short term. So I set myself some long term goals, really rough ones, and maybe set ones on the annual cycle, what I need to do this year to be successful, and then I break them down to what I need to do this week, and then just continually go back to that and look at what I did that week, and then realize there's probably too much of that week to do. So prioritize, fit that around my calendar. You've only got X amount of time, and try for that week, and then rinse and repeat. It's a coping mechanism for me. When I realize I'm drowning, just re-look at your to-do list, good old-fashioned to-do list stuff, simple stuff, I think, for me.
So BA background, I do must, should, could, would. Sarah, how about you? What are your top tips?
Yeah, so mine's similar to Stuart, but a kind of a reverse. So it's a reflection back. I think sometimes we get so caught up in being able to see our own development and being able to see how we've progressed, that sometimes we miss the achievements we make along the way. So personally, for me, I find something that helps me is to record those little achievements as you go, and just take some time to then have a look back and see how far you've come. Because it's amazing when you do that, how quickly you can see how well you've done it. And if you just need that little bit of a confidence boost one day, having that ability to be able to just open a book or a spreadsheet or however you want to record it, I think it really empowers you to really realise, just how great you are and what you've been achieving. So that'd be one of my little tips.
Natasha, anything you want to add to those ones?
I'll share mine, and it's super simple, and that is do something that is a little bit scary. And I think that's probably the key way for me to overcome it. So if you wanted a phone call with someone because you don't want to have a Zoom call, just do something every day that pushes you out of your comfort zone enough to be comfortable with and to grow from. But afterwards, it'll feel terrible, but afterwards you'll think, oh no, I can do that. And I think for me, that sets in kind of reminding myself of all the things that I have done and I can do just by doing something that is just a tiny bit terrifying.
Yeah. I also have a list of I want to do. So want to jump from one call another, don't follow emails every time they arrive. Don't look at the two screens and stuff like that. And also there is that theory about doing 80-20. So I defined every day 3 most important things. So just once I do that, I feel like, yeah, I've done it. I've done something. And also start with something that I can do in the morning. That is also quite good. So you start with a sense of achievement.
So I think it's fair to say one of the areas where people often struggle with imposter syndrome is when it comes to looking for new roles. So job roles often seemingly have a never-ending list of criteria that someone needs to do. How do you muster the courage to apply and address the fact that you might not have every skill in the list?
Shall I go for it? So it's job specs are often a list of skills that are required for the job. That doesn't mean you need to have them from the beginning. Some of the things you actually acquire. When you look, we all do that. When you look at the jobs, like, I don't know, half of that or 2/4. But there is the other side, flip side of that. If you know everything, then why are you applying? Because you already know that. You're already doing the job. So you have to actually grow. So there are bets. We have to allow some things that we don't know. That doesn't mean going to interview, talking to people not knowing anything about. It's you do so your prep work. You find out what is it, but expect to actually learn on the job. So yeah, pick up the courage, a courage to actually apply. And also, I don't know if I can hear echoing. Is everyone here echoing? Yeah. It's a journey. What I would say, it's a journey. You apply to a job, and if you get it, perfect. If not, you learn. You find what are the skills you need to master or to get, and then you do that again. And it's if you flip that on the other side and say, actually, every rejection is a step closer to my job, then it's a positive spin. It is difficult when you have imposter syndrome to actually hear the feedback and ask for it, because it might actually just confirm that you're not good enough. But again, being aware of that helps, I think.
One of the things I hear quite a few people say is that they receive compliments from their colleagues, but their imposter syndrome means that they just can't accept them, or they don't believe them, or they feel like there's some ulterior motive as to what their colleagues are saying or being nice to them about. Does anyone have any tips of how you can handle that and distinguish that feeling with reality, I guess?
It's probably fair to say that people don't disingenuinely give compliments often. I'll sometimes find myself in a room and think, do these people know that I'm here? Like, this must be a mistake. But mistakes don't tend to happen like that in businesses. If you're in a room or someone gives you a compliment, it's because they probably mean it, or because your skill set has been recognized or needed. So I think just a reality check. Have you ever genuinely given someone a compliment? Probably not. And if you had, generally you've had good intentions. So I think it's just checking in with reality there. Like, it's really unlikely that it is disingenuous, and if it is, we'll just take it anyway.
A really nice tip from Andrew in our chat thread for those who haven't seen, which is if you encourage people to send thank you emails, getting people to store them. I have a similar inbox called Bad Day, which is where there's nice messages in there. So if I'm having a bad day, I just have a look in there. So I definitely support that top tip from Andrew. Thank you for sharing that one. Okay, I don't know if we've actually got any students on the call, but one of the questions we had in a previous session was from a final year student who was really pushing themselves to get a first. However, they don't believe that they could do it, and they really struggle with comparing themselves with their peers, and what's the point of them trying when their peers are so far ahead of them. And it was also impacting their willingness or keenness to apply to job roles. I think for me, the key thing there is about comparing yourself to others and how you perceive them. How do you handle that yourselves?
So it's comparing yourself to others is a slippery slope, because there will always be people who know more, who are better than you, especially if you don't know really what they know. So from outside, they might be self-confident, but they might be thinking the same, everyone else is better than me. So it's quite it's not a good way to actually do anything by comparison. If you want to do something, then just go for it and see how to get that. I think more especially when you just graduated, everything looks scary and you don't know anything about it. So we're looking at a job spec. I mean, even with experienced people, when you look at a job spec, as you said, it seems like endless. But getting there, finding company they like, finding job they like, and getting information is quite useful. So unfamiliar, what we talked before, when actually syndrome kicks in, becomes familiar, and just go ahead with that. That's the only way. There is no really other way to get stuck in and overcome obstacles.
And how do you handle it when you get negative criticism and it kind of feeds into all of those inner fears that you've got? So you think you've done something well and you get a bit of devastating criticism and it goes, oh, all of those things I worried about were true. How do you kind of bounce back from those things? Sarah, I'm going to pick on you.
Thanks. I think in that moment in time, I think you've just got to, those feelings will come and you've got to learn to accept those. And I think that's only natural, that you will go through those emotions, but it's then being able to kind of take that feedback and break it down into things you can actually do. And I suppose as well, it comes down to recognizing that there's going to be things that you are absolutely fantastic at, and look for opportunities you can really use those things. And yeah, there are always going to be things that you can improve on. Definitely, like, work on those, but there's going to be things that you're not that great at, and sometimes it's accepting that, because I think, as someone said earlier, you can't be fantastic at everything, but it's really just being able to take the time to understand what you are great at, look for opportunities where you can do it, and take that feedback and see where you can develop.
Yeah, I'd agree with Sarah. I think just be unapologetically you. I think work, build on your strengths, find people that know you and help see if they can be your mentor. So when you're starting out, obviously they won't be at the place you work because you won't know anyone, but people that know you, that you can trust and have a conversation with, and they'll advise you. And then eventually, when it places you work, you'll build up mentorship groups, and they might not necessarily be in your immediate line management group, whatever, but just people that you can talk about things with. But yeah, just be unapologetically you. Don't try to be someone else.
Yeah, I think one of the top tips Millian gave me or gave in a talk ages ago was try and view yourself as someone else views you. So I think it's really easy to kind of belittle your achievements because you kind of know how much effort or otherwise you put into a piece of work, and kind of your list, you can look at it and go, so not that big. But if you just try and imagine if you were looking at that list of achievements, but it was someone else, try and kind of just flick that mindset round a little bit, can really help kind of give that perspective, which I thought was quite a good one.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got another good question, which are like, any tips on celebrating your successes without feeling like you are bragging? Natasha, I'm going to pick on you.
I don't really have any good tips for that, to be honest. I think if you are bragging, is that necessarily a bad thing? I guess it depends on what you class as bragging. I don't know. I'm not going to answer that one because I don't really see celebrating his achievements as bragging necessarily.
I mean, I would echo that. I think that's a symptom almost of imposter syndrome, that acknowledging and sharing your achievements feels like bragging. Maybe that's the takeaway.
I think overstating them would be a problem, but if you are being honest with yourself, then it's not bragging, is it?
Yeah, I think it's when you're actually happy about them, that's contagious. That's not bragging. When you're just talking about success, it seems like you're telling people what you're doing, but sincerely being happy about and sharing that, I don't think that's bragging. That's actually allowing yourself to enjoy success.
And I think, Natasha, what you said before about taking yourself out of the comfort zone every now and again, if you do feel that it is something that feels uncomfortable to you, maybe find someone like a role model or a colleague that you've seen them put posts out, blogs, and they've shared their successes, and just ask for some advice and guidance about how they would do it. Sometimes the hardest thing is starting it. And if you can get that support from someone else, someone who you see as being great at that kind of thing, then that may help you give the confidence to be able to, you know, take on that challenge and put something out there.
Okay, another question from the list. Does assertiveness have a part to play in combating imposter syndrome? I'm going to pick on Stuart.
I'm not sure it's about assertiveness. I think, I guess one thing I learned over time where I've struggled is just to try to be in control of yourself. So reflect back, something Sarah said, reflect back on how you've been doing and what work feels like, and then just try to set yourself up for success. If you've got a calendar and you're really busy, well, you've only got the time that you're not in meetings or whatever to use. So then if you've got a certain amount of work that you're scheduling, planning, you've only got X amount of time to do that. So I'm not sure it's about assertiveness. I think it's just about building a coping mechanism for you in a way that will work on a sustainable basis, I think.
I'm going to kind of try and emphasize that all of us have this. To everyone, when was your most recent experience of imposter syndrome? I'm going to pick on Sarah because you're in my top left to go first. Oh, sorry, I can't hear you, Sarah. I don't know if others can't either.
That's a perfect example. So I was actually saying this panel is probably, in this moment in time, what am I saying? Is this actually adding any value to anyone who's listening to this? And I suppose even on the run-up, I was thinking, you know, what am I going to cover? What questions am I going to ask? What if another question comes and it shows me up as an imposter on the imposter panel? I mean, that's just the perfect storm, isn't it? So yeah, that's my answer, this panel.
Natasha, when was your most recent? You're now not allowed to pick this panel.
Exactly the same. I thought, people see me on this, they'll go, why is she there? Is she lost? You know, is she just plugging a gap? But then I had to talk to myself and be like, no, you wouldn't have been asked. If you couldn't bring your own experience and also people that I've spoke to through our digital hair program and the kind of the weight of that network, I suppose the mass catharsis that comes when people talk about imposter syndrome head on or say, I don't know what I'm doing, or I didn't know what I was doing. And like having those conversations, I think, is the key to undoing it. But definitely this panel was the most recent example, and various calls as well, where I think, oh, can I do that? Can I lead that? And then I can, and I do it. So it's just, I think every time it comes up, you just have to think, but remember last time you had this, it's fine.
True.
Stuart or Vesna, do you want to go next?
Go on then. Well, I guess it's a variant on the theme, I suppose. So I guess because of my job title, so managing director, when you do something like this and you kind of presenting at something, it's like, oh, you're a managing director of BJSS, and they say it in a certain way that sounds really impressive, like it's a big thing, and I still can't get my head around it. It's just like, well, I feel like I'm a facilitator. I'm a project manager in an office surrounded by some brilliant people that do a lot of really clever work. So actually my job feels fundamentally really simple. So I still, every time somebody says that and says that must be really hard work or something, I think I still, to this day, I still can't get my head around that. So maybe I think that's a bit of a variant on the imposter syndrome, kind of, because I guess there's a lot of, I don't know, quite impressive people that do that kind of role, but not me. That is the question.
We're being asked to wrap up, so I'm going to get Vesna, if you're right, to share your most recent experience, and then I'll...
It's just sentence. I dread performance reviews. So it's every time it's like, I mean, I don't have a clue what I've done. I have to go through the notes and really what I've done all the year. But the first feeling is just a horror. It's like, I mean, but the roles and I mean, am I going to pass it? I mean, I can't pass it. Stuart's there, so can I fail it? Questionable. But that feeling is like, what do I do?
I should have tried to end on a more positive note.
Exactly.
If nothing else, hopefully what you'll all take away from this is that this really is something that everyone suffers from some time or another, and hopefully you've all taken at least a few tips away from this. So thank you all for joining us, and thank you again to our lovely panelists. Really appreciate you taking the time today. If you'd like to know more about imposter syndrome, there's obviously lots of information available, and we're also going to look at doing another session in a bit more detail at some point in the coming months, so stay tuned. Thank you very much, everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone. Bye.